Hey guys, welcome back to Ace Recaps. Today, I'm going to explain a 2015 sci-fi horror film titled The Lazarus Effect. Heads up, spoilers ahead, you've been warned. The movie begins with a group of scientists conducting experiments. They're trying to bring a dead pig back to life, but their attempts end in failure, because apparently regular bacon wasn't exciting enough. Dr. Frank and his wife, Dr. Zoe, are the head researchers of the Lazarus Project. Zoe accidentally discovered the Lazarus serum by bonding fast-growing tumor cells, which sped up the nerve fiber regrowth in the brain. After injecting a dying patient with the Lazarus serum, the scientists used timed electrical charges to activate the serum and jumpstart the brain. Their goal is to give healthcare professionals more time to do their jobs by extending the period where they can bring someone back from the dead, without brain damage and without long-term effects. Their team includes Nico, the mechanical engineer who builds the equipment, Clay, the research assistant, and Eva, a new hire brought in to document and film the entire project. Nico seems to have feelings for Zoe, even though she's married. One night when Zoe is working late by herself, Nico tries to make a move and exploit her marriage troubles, but she firmly states that she's in love with her husband. Smooth move, Romeo. Nothing says I care like hitting on your married co-worker. Later that night, as Zoe sleeps, she has a recurring nightmare of hell calling out to her. Clearly, she's been to the DMV recently. Frank brushes it off as just a dream and nothing more. A few weeks go by, and Clay manages to solve the equation that was keeping them from completing the Lazarus serum. The team gets to work and acquires a dog that was recently put down. They inject the modified serum into its brain, and after multiple electrical charges, they give up, thinking their equation is still not right. Out of nowhere, the dog suddenly comes back to life, shocking everyone. When Zoe checks on the dog, she notices something odd. The dog's cataracts have vanished, but the team chalks it up as a side effect of the serum. To be safe, Frank and Zoe decide to adopt the dog and name it Rocky until they're sure they know what they're dealing with. Let's hope it doesn't start punching slabs of meat or running up museum steps. Back at home, they notice Rocky acting strangely. Frank thinks that it'll take the dog a few more days to rebuild its neural pathways, while Zoe worries that they might have snatched it from doggy heaven. Frank ultimately convinces her that they're doing the right thing, and their research will help millions of people. As Frank continues his research, Zoe goes to bed, and we watch Rocky slowly approach and stare at her in her sleep. The next morning at the lab, Frank explains that when a person dies, the brain floods itself with DMT, which is the most potent psychedelic drug on the planet. Nobody knows why the brain does this, but it's why people believe they see the light at the end of the tunnel. They're essentially tripping. So basically, our brains throw us one last cosmic rave before checkout time. Zoe disagrees with this theory, believing there is a God and a heaven. Since brain impulses are energy, and energy can neither be created nor destroyed, she thinks the energy must move to another place, and the DMT is just there to help the soul move on. Later, while putting the dog through an MRI machine, the team notices something odd. The Lazarus serum is still in its system, causing intense brain impulses. Clay advises them not to keep the dog at home since it might turn aggressive at any time. That night, Clay is alone at the lab continuing the research, with Rocky in his crate. Suddenly, he notices that the dog has escaped. When he looks for it, Rocky lunges at him, but Clay luckily escapes. He later tells the team that they need to put the dog down as it seemed possessed, but everyone else disagrees. As they continue monitoring the dog, they notice signs of aggression, confusion, loss of appetite, and that the serum still hasn't left the dog's system. The dog's brain continues to create many more neural pathways at an alarming rate, confusing Frank. The next day, the university's review board calls Frank in and tells him to stop his experiment. They believe he's playing God with dead animals, and since most of their investors are religious, they cannot allow him to continue. Frank tries his best to make his case, but in vain. It turns out that Crolloni's, a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company, pressured the university to stop the trials. A group of security personnel barges into the lab and seizes all their equipment. Zoe tries to protest, but she can't stop them. Eva uses this opportunity to sneak Rocky past the guards. Devastated that their life's work has been thrown away just for a big company to take all the credit, Frank comes up with a plan. He wants to duplicate the serum, film the result, and finally take back what's rightfully theirs. Zoe pulls out a backpack to show them a stash of serum she'd hidden away just in case. That night, they all sneak into their lab, risking their jobs. They take out another dead dog from a freezer and begin the procedure. They inject its brain with the Lazarus serum, and just as Zoe starts the electrical charges, a short circuit causes her to collapse. Realizing she has no pulse, the group panics and starts CPR. After multiple failed attempts to revive her, they conclude that nothing can be done to bring her back. Frank, unwilling to lose his wife, decides to try the Lazarus serum on her, even though the whole team is against the idea. What's the worst that could happen? Oh right, literally everything. They're all terrified of conducting a human experiment and ending up in jail, but Frank is ready to risk everything to bring back the love of his life. Till death do us part was more of a guideline really. They finally agree and begin the procedure by injecting the Lazarus serum into her brain. After a few electrical charges, they notice a guard heading towards the lab, so they all hide. Once the coast is clear, they see Zoe sitting up straight. When Frank approaches her and removes the white sheet, she grabs his hand and asks if she just woke up from the dead. Nah, it's just a really bad hangover. Throughout this, Zoe has a lifeless look in her eyes. When Eva asks if she saw anything after death, Zoe has flashbacks of a nightmarish place. They continue performing various tests on her. The results show that her body is completely healed, but her brain has way too much neural activity. The team decides to rerun the test in an hour once the Lazarus serum has had time to leave her system. Clay is very skeptical about the outcome of the experiment. Nico explains that humans usually only use 10% of their brain, but Zoe's MRI scan shows her whole brain being used. Frank takes Zoe aside and assures her that she'll be alright. She breaks down in tears. When Frank puts a cross around her neck, it hurts her, and objects in the room start moving. She suddenly predicts what Frank is about to say, which freaks him out, and he leaves the room. Great, now she's both undead and a know-it-all. Zoe starts gaining more control over her psychokinetic abilities. When she looks at her companions in another room, she can now read all their thoughts and doubts about her. They all think they shouldn't have brought her back to life. She notices the Lazarus serum flowing through her veins, and when she tries to wash her hands, the water hurts her fingers. Suddenly, the mirror in front of her shatters, and she sees her evil side through it. Rocky approaches her and starts growling at Zoe, and she kills the dog with just a look. Well, that's one way to avoid walking the dog. As Frank continues working hard to help his wife, she comes up to him from behind and breaks down in tears. She tells him how she can hear and see things and tries to show him her hand, but it's back to normal now. She explains that when she died, she went to a place where she could hear screams for eternity. Frank tries to tell her it was just a dream, but Zoe insists she was in hell because she couldn't wake up. Although she was gone for just an hour on Earth, she was stuck there for years, living the same day over and over again. Frank tries to come up with a scientific explanation, but Zoe explains that hell makes you relive your worst memory forever. Frank gives her a sedative to help her sleep. A little while later, Eva examines her and suddenly ends up in Zoe's dream. There, she sees a child call out to her, and out of nowhere, the devil's hand pulls her to the ground. She wakes up on the floor, crying in horror. When she explains to the team what happened, they see the devil's handprint on her arm. Frank is shocked, as it's exactly what happened to Zoe when she was a child and her apartment caught fire. The team concludes that once you die, a door opens to the afterworld, but since they pulled her back before she went through, she's now trapped in her own nightmare. Everyone is hesitant to continue the experiment, but Frank begs them to reconsider, as it's the only way to save his wife. Clay patches up Eva and tells her he thinks the Lazarus serum is causing this. There's a reason human evolution takes millions of years, but this is happening to Zoe in minutes, giving her incredible psychic powers. As Nico looks through his computer, he realizes that Krolones is tracking all of their data, so Frank and the team decide to pack up and leave the lab before they arrive. As Zoe sleeps, she continues to have terrifying nightmares. She rips off the cross from her neck and levitates in the air. When Nico notices she's missing, he goes looking for her. He finds her in another room, where she uses his feelings for her against him. He pushes her away and promises they'll find a way to fix her, but she claims it's too late and locks him inside the room. Nico is then dragged into a locker, where Zoe uses her powers to crush the box and kill him. Talk about getting friend-zoned to death. When the team discovers Nico is missing, Zoe pretends to have no idea about it. Clay freaks out and tries to call security, but suddenly the power goes out. When they try to leave the lab, they realize they're all stuck there because of the power cut. Zoe starts toying with Eva, which leads Eva to accuse her of doing something to Nico. When Clay confronts Zoe to reveal the truth, she winks at him, and suddenly Clay starts choking on his pen. Frank and Eva try their best to help, but it's too late. By the time they remove the object blocking his airway, Clay is dead. When Frank realizes what his actions have caused, Zoe disappears and destroys the entire room with just her mind. A little while later, Frank and Eva wake up, luckily unharmed. They run into the morgue, and Frank takes a vial, deciding to finally put Zoe down for good. Just then, all the dead animals in the morgue come back to life, forcing Frank and Eva to run into another room. Worst petting zoo ever. Frank tells Eva to hide, and that if he fails to stop Zoe, she needs to do it, as they can't let her hurt anyone else. As he approaches his wife, Zoe comes close and reads his mind. When she realizes his intentions, she uses her powers to crush his skull, killing him. Zoe then grabs a bag of the Lazarus serum and injects herself with more of it, making her even more powerful. At the same time, Eva takes some syringes and hides them in her shoe. She searches the lab for Zoe and is confronted by a demonic version of her. Zoe pulls her into a nightmare where Eva meets the child version of Zoe, who hands her a matchbox. Eva realizes that Zoe was the one who set her apartment building on fire, meaning she was evil from the very beginning. Clearly, someone took Liar Pants on fire way too literally. This is why she ended up in hell in the first place. Eva begs the little girl to help her stop Zoe. She wakes up in the real world, having stabbed Zoe in the chest with a syringe, seemingly ending her evil reign. Just then, a group of firefighters enter the lab, and Eva explains what happened. Suddenly, the firefighter transforms into Zoe, who proceeds to snap Eva's neck. The movie ends as we watch Zoe line up all her dead friends and inject them with the Lazarus serum, raising her army from hell. Friendship goals? Till death do us part. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.